Good evening, everybody. We are here with Dr. Vicente Mata-Silva. He is an assistant professor of biological science and research at UTEP. And today he's going to present to us a little bit about rattlesnakes in the Chihuahuan Desert.
Thank you, Claudia. So now I can share the screen.
And this is very exciting for me because I don't know much about this topic. So I'm very excited to learn.
Okay, so thank you, Claudia, for the invitation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a group of organisms that I find very interesting. And basically, they have become the subject, right, of my area. So these are the rattlesnakes from the Trans-Pecos of Texas. And actually, so I'm going to talk about rattlesnakes, but the area is going to be more specific from a place where basically I've spent like half of my life now. And I want to start mentioning that, so I'm not from El Paso. I'm from Mexico. I was born in Oaxaca. I'm from coastal Oaxaca, so I spent my childhood there. I still go there, but once I finished my junior high school, then I moved to Mexico City, so I attended high school there. And then later on, I joined the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, where I got my bachelor's in biology. And so my training is in herpetology. So basically, I study amphibians and reptiles. But originally, my plan was to study mammals, right? So I saw myself, working with the deer and large mammals. But as I started taking courses with mammals, most of the lab practices were like working with indirect material, like proxy material. So we were not really working directly with mammals. So I was kind of disappointed. And then it happened that during college, I took a herpetology class and I realized that that's what I wanted. Then
I have a quick question and sorry for interrupting.
Uh-huh.
So I love biology and I want to ask you, like, how did you knew you wanted to study biology? Because it's not like a career a lot of people realize, like there's like in the science world it is, but like in the urban like fields and design fields, we don't talk much about biology, which I think we should. But how did you get interested in, like, how did you say I want to do biology?
No, that's a good question. When I was a kid, I used to spend most of the time, like outdoors. I'm from a little town, so I used to go always to the river, the mountains with my friends. And I had a feeling that I wanted to do something that had to do with nature. So because I'm from a little town, so all the people that I knew, like professionals working outside were veterinarians. So one of my uncles was a veterinarian. He's a veterinarian. And I told my parents that I wanted to be a veterinarian. And they didn't like it. So they wanted me to be a civil engineering or something else that has anything to do with being a vet. Then when at the end of high school, I had to choose the career that I wanted once you get into the national university, and just randomly selected biology. So basically I took the risk because I chose biology with, like it could go either way, either I like it or I wouldn't. And it just happened that I was just fascinated with biology, and that's how it happened. and eventually ended up being a herpetologist.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. So then, so once I got my bachelor's in Mexico City at UNAM, then I moved to the US in 2000, and I joined the UTEP program. So where I got my master's degree there. And then I stay here in El Paso. I got my PhD and my postdoc, and now I'm still working at UTEP. For my master's degree, I work with lizards, these two species that you see here. And another interesting thing was that initially I didn't like snakes at all. So I used to have nightmares with snakes. So then when I decided to work with the reptiles, so I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna work with lizards, never with snakes, because I just don't like snakes. So while working with my master with lizards, I met another herpetologist, Justin Howard, and he was working with rattlesnakes. So he was there when I really happened to I really got to know more about snakes, more about rattlesnakes. And then I found out that that's what I really like. You know, like I realized that I really was interested in rattlesnakes. So for my PhD, that was the subject, right, of my dissertation. So working with rattlesnakes. And then I just got, you know, like more fascinated by this group of organisms. So working with rattlesnakes, I am more interested in the ecology of rattlesnakes, like how they live, the interactions that they have, and the interactions that they have with other organisms. So since 2007, so I've been working with them. The way I acquire most of this information is through a method known as radio telemetry. And I'm going to explain a little later how this technique works. And so I spend most of the time here, you know, in this region at the UTEP research station. I want to talk a little more about that too. So, but basically most of my work comes from this region, which is known as the Trans-Pecos region, right? The Trans-Pecos, Texas, which is actually the northern portion of the Chihuahuan Desert. So the information that or the subject that I'm more interested in is natural history of the rattlesnakes. So basically how they live, right? Like everything that they do in order to survive. Other subjects that I'm interested in is biogeography. And basically this is the distribution of, in this case, amphibians and reptiles. And for this subject, my area of work is this region, Mexico and Central America. And I just had the chance that I happened to work with other colleagues that are interested in this subject. So we have been able to produce a significant amount of information regarding these areas. And so as all we know, right, like snakes in general, like most people don't like snakes, right? And most people will kill them on sight. As soon as they see them, they will try to get rid of them. However, as we know, of course, snakes in general, they're important, right, in the ecosystem. And we know that we need to conserve them, protect them. And so we know, right, because they are prey items of other species, they will consume other organisms. And some of them, especially the large ones, large species, they have an important function in maintaining the structure of different communities, different ecosystems. And if we are talking about sustainability, right, the conservation of different ecosystems, different natural resources, and maintain them for future generations. So we need to make sure that these ecosystems are in good shape, that they're healthy. So for that, we need to know the ecosystem, right? We need to know what's going on there. So we need to know the species, and that, of course, includes snakes, especially in this region. So besides all the important points, right, of why snakes are important in the ecosystems. So it was 2 years ago when this publication came up. And now we know another reason of why snakes are so important in the ecosystems. And this paper basically talks about snakes as agents of seed dispersal. So basically, plants are using snakes too, right, in order to increase their populations, plant populations, increase their distribution. So that's something new that this is actually pretty cool to find out about. So again, although I mentioned the Trans-Pecos region, actually most of my work, most of my time. So I spend my time at UTEP and at this site, the Indian Mountains Research Station, that we usually call just Indio Ranch. So Indio Ranch, it's a property that belongs to UTEP, and originally it has more than 40,000 acres. So it's a pretty significant area. And if you go there, you're gonna look at the landscape and you're gonna realize that it's basically a pristine Chihuahuan desert landscape. So it's a typical environment that you see in the northern portion of the Chihuahuan desert. And this research station has an important functions, right, regarding the conservation of these natural ecosystems. So we use this station for protecting the natural environment, the Chihuahuan desert, but also this station is important for doing research, right, of all these natural resources. And besides that, we also use for education, right, on the natural ecosystems. We bring here different classes from UTEP. It can be biology classes, classes from geology department, and from other departments. We also get students, researchers from other institutions, from museums, natural museums. And once in a while, we also get researchers from other countries as well. So again, I think this station has an important role, right, in terms of conservation and in terms of sustainability. So I became an assistant professor in 2018 at UTEP. And also I'm a co-director of this research station. And since now I'm a co-director of this station, I have even more room, more time to even do more activities at this place. So most of the property is represented by just a Chihuahuan desert scrub, the typical vegetation that you see here. But also we have a permanent spring that has a unique ecosystem, right, with unique species and interactions. So this site becomes even a more exciting, more attractive for researchers, because now we get more land, And this, now the property reaches the river. So this picture that you see here. So this is actually the Rio Grande, the Rio Bravo. And on the right side, that's the the US, right? So this is part of the research station. And the left side is the Mexican side. So we're talking about 1,200 more acres of natural habitat. So now the research station has more habitats, more taxa to protect, and more organisms to study. So we have fish, we have more turtles, we have more reptiles, and we have many more plant species and birds and many other, a lot of invertebrates, right, that are now protected and can be studied by at this research station. So just to give you a better idea where this place is located, on the left side, you see this map. You see here at Paso, and then the star represents Indian Range. So we're talking about 150 miles from El Paso. It's not too close, but also not too far. And the orange area, so it represents the Chihuahuan Desert, right? So most of the Chihuahuan Desert is located in Mexico, but the northern portion is in the US. So mostly Texas and New Mexico. On the right side, the white polygon represents the research station, and these two fingers at the bottom, so they represent the new sections that we acquire, and they go all the way to the Rio Grande.
Is this near Waco?
No, it's way farther.
Oh, okay.
So are you familiar with the Van Horn going east?
Yes.
So we're talking about probably like 20 miles south of Van Horn.
Okay.
So here in El Paso, we have rattlesnakes. Probably you're gonna see individuals that belong to 5 species, depending on where you are. But at the research station, we only have these 3 species. The most common one is the one you see on the left side. So this is the Western diamondback. And after, the second most abundant is the black-tailed rattlesnake, which is very easy to identify because of the color of the tail, right? And the third one is the least abundant. So this is the rock rattlesnake. And it's easy to identify too because of the coloration. They are very small, less than 2 feet long. And the pinkish coloration, which is very different from the other 2 species. So you can see all 3, let's say the Franklin's Mountains. When you go there, you might see them. And the figure that you see here, all these dots represents the property, and all these dots, each one of them represents an individual rattlesnake that have been collected through different years. So some of these dots overlap, but we're talking about probably like close to 500 individuals that have been captured and marked and processed probably since early 2000. So when I did my dissertation, I selected the smallest rattlesnake, the rock rattlesnake. And the reason for that is because compared among these 3 species, this one has we have very little information regarding the ecology of this species. So while I did study this species, I was focused on different subjects. that basically the main goal is produce information that would or can help on the conservation, the protection of these species. So when I started reading about rattlesnakes in all the literature, and I remember I read this book, and the first sentence I saw was that the author mentioned that in order to conserve and protect a species effectively, so we need to know the species, right? We need to know the requirements of this species so we can provide those conditions and increase the chances that that species is going to be there, right? It's going to be present. So some of these requirements that I was interested on was identify the home ranges of these organisms, right? The areas where they spend their time. How do they move? How often they move? Since here in this region we have a cold period, right? The winter period. So I wanted to know, right, where do they go during these cold times? Also, I could obtain information as body temperatures. So let's remember that these organisms are ectotherms, so their body temperature changes, right, depending on the outside conditions. And I could also find information on their diet. So what kind of prey items do they consume? And the way I obtain this information is through the use of radio telemetry. So this is the technique that the person that I got inspired on, right? This is the technique that I was using. So this technique is not new, actually. It became popular in the 70s. However, it has been improving. The equipment have become more efficient. They have become lighter. They have become smaller. So you have a chance to really work with more organisms, but also smaller individuals. So the way it works is that we use these devices, these transmitters. So these transmitters emit radio signals, and these signals will be detected with a radio receiver and using an antenna. And the way that we do it is we implant this transmitter in the snakes. We do like small surgery, small operation. We put these transmitters, and we can place other devices too, depending on the size of the snake. So the transmitter will emit these signals for a year, 2 years, depending on the size of the transmitter and on how long you want to monitor these individuals. So on the right side, the upper corner, you can see this image where you can see the position of the transmitter placed along the snake, right? So follows the shapes of the snake, and it doesn't seem to bother the individuals, right? So you're gonna make sure that these snakes behave normal. So while doing this project, sorry, go ahead.
Does the, so let's say one lasts 2 years, do they just stop working, or like, do you remove them?
Exactly. So let's say the battery that the transmitter has lasts 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta make sure that you pick up the snake, right, and remove the transmitter before the battery die. Otherwise, you are not gonna get any signal, and you're gonna lose that snake, right? And maybe you might find that snake again and bring your transmitter back.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, right, so once you implant this transmitter and you start monitoring these snakes, so this is the fun part. Snakes are gonna move in different sites. This allowed me to train a number of students, show them this technique. Not only they get to know more about these individuals, get to know more about snakes, but also about learning these different methods. So all this information that I was acquired during my dissertation, so finally I was able to get this information, write it down, and I published it in 2018. And some of this information, for example, just to show you the name of this, the common name of this snake is the rock rattlesnake. So something interesting and kind of shocking to me was that at the beginning, when I started looking for them, right, in order to implant the transmitters, so I had a hard time finding them. And why? Because most herpetologists that work with this or look for rattlesnakes, so they will look for these snakes on rocky areas, right, in rocky hills. So that's why where I spend most of my time. So then when I started monitoring these individuals, so to my surprise is that they find, they use different habitats, but definitely they spend most of their time in arroyos, just along the vegetation. And there are not many rocks there, right? So I was joking that instead of a rock rattlesnake, it should be called a arroyo rattlesnake. So that was something cool that they do, at least at the research station. And also other type of information that we were able to obtain is like, okay, what kind of habitat they use, but also within those habitat, what kind of microhabitats they use, like what kind of a specific sites do they like. So when looking at these specific sites, definitely they prefer a microhabitat that have vegetation, that have plants. They have to have plants for sure. Among herpetologists also is very popular the idea that when you're gonna look for snakes, everybody says that you should look for them during the rainy season, right? So we know that we have a monsoon period here in the region. And because during this time is when the snakes come out of their shelters, they are more active and they do all their snake things during this period. So what I did, I overlapped the precipitation throughout the year. And then I analyzed the movement activity of these snakes. And overall, it seems like, yes, yeah, kind of, it is true. It is during the rainy season, right? From June through September, when snakes will display most of their activity. During this time, they will feed, they will reproduce, and they will do their daily activities. So because you go there and you can find the snakes anytime, right? As long as they have this transmitter emitting these signals. So you can find them anytime, regardless if they are visible or not, right? They could be underground, so you can still find them. So every time you go and check these individuals, you get their locations, you take the coordinates of these locations. And once you have a number of these locations, then you're gonna be able to estimate their home ranges. So here in this figure, you see 3 polygons, and you see the smallest ones, the pink one that includes all these pink dots. So this polygon represents the home range of the smallest species, the rock rattlesnake. And then I overlap this home range with the white one that belongs to the Western Diamondback. And the green polygon belongs to the black-tailed rattlesnake. So in general, the home ranges of the rock rattlesnake, they are smaller than the larger rattlesnakes. So that's how I determine a home ranges for these individuals. This is the only information that we have so far about this species. And I was able also to obtain data during the winter periods, right? So I was able to determine that basically these snakes, they spend about 5 months underground, right? So during the whole cold period. And the figures that you see here, the red dots, they represent their body temperatures during the different winter months. And the ones in blue, this is the ambient temperature, right? The outside temperature. So you can say that it's better to be underground. As you can see, the body temperatures, they are more stable compared to the ambient temperature. And again, at the beginning of the winter period, there is a little more variation compared to, let's say, January or February. So this makes sense, right? Because something interesting that I found too was that during the winter period, if there is a nice and warm day, they will come out, and if it rains or it snows, they will come out and take that water, they will take that snow. And definitely something that they will not do is eat. Why? Because eating requires higher temperatures, body temperatures, so that they can digest that prey fast. So one question that I also had, okay, so 5 months is a long time, right? So just being there on the ground and not eating at all. So I was wondering how much mass they will lose during that entire period. So I did it for the rock rattlesnake during my dissertation, and I found out that they lose about 10% of their body mass, which is not a lot. And then after that, I started doing it with some individuals from the other two species of rattlesnake, the western diamondback and the blacktail. And in general, the amount of body mass that they lose during the winter period is pretty much similar, no more than 30% of their total body mass. In some areas, in colder regions, rattlesnake, they have their sites that they will use during the summer time, and then they will select other sites where they're going to spend the winter. So usually these sites, they are separate. They will migrate a few miles to those sites. So I was wondering too, what would happen at this research station. And it turns out that they spend the winter in the same area where they do their summer activities. And also, they don't like to socialize. They spend the winter by themselves individually, and which is something that the rattlesnake do different in other, let's say, higher latitudes, where winter arrives, they go to the sites and they will spend the winter together. Where I'm talking about hundreds of individuals. So that was something cool to find out too. So after that, more recently, collaborating with other graduate students, we were able to continue to work with western diamondbacks. And for that, again, we look at the typical, like home ranges, movement rate, but also something cool that we found among some other things was that during the summertime, western diamondbacks, they like these sites that are artificial tanks. They're just made of dirt. And during the summertime, these artificial tanks will retain water for a number of weeks. So because of this water, so we're gonna have more vegetation on these sites. So in general, every herpetologist working with snakes, we all know that male rattlesnakes, they have a larger home range compared to the female ones. And that's pretty much the rule. So something that we found out that when these features are available, right, these we call rich areas because they have more vegetations, they have more, probably more food. So male individuals, they will spend more time, or basically the whole summer, they will spend their time just here in these tanks. Why? Because they get all the food that they need. And also they will find females in there, so they will eat and they will reproduce. So what happened that I'm talking about the largest individuals, but having very small home ranges. So basically they broke the rules that we used to know about rattlesnakes home ranges. And also this showed that how humans, by modifying these natural habitats, they can affect the movement pattern, but also the home ranges of these rattlesnakes. Other things that we were doing, or that we are doing with these individuals, so since we can monitor them, right, for so many months, so we are playing with them, we are adding other devices. So one of them is this white rectangle piece that you see here. So this is an accelerometer. And what this device does is measure how fast an individual moves, either it's moving or not moving. These devices, they usually used to be kind of big. They were used in the past with large vertebrates, large mammals. And this is the first time that we tried with snakes. And this also turned out to be pretty cool information. And the figure that you see here, and basically shows you when the snake is not moving, and then you see this zigzag, right? And it shows when the snake is moving. So because we again tracked these snakes for several months, we analyzed this data, and we concluded that in general, rattlesnakes are kind of lazy. So they spend most of their time not moving, and once in a while they just come out and do their snake things. It makes sense because, again, we're talking about ectothermic organisms. They don't have to spend as much energy as, let's say, we mammals do. So they don't need to go out and find food as frequently as other organisms. So we are doing this also with the black-tailed rattlesnakes. We're still analyzing the data, so but eventually we're gonna have that available. So besides that, what we are doing lately, so I'm collecting data too in slope selection. So during the winter period, rattlesnake, they will select a slope. They will spend the winter during different slopes. These slopes are facing the different cardinal points. They could be facing south, north, east, etc. In general, we know that snake will select slopes facing south because these facing slopes are the warmer ones during the winter period. So however, with the initial data that I have, the rattlesnakes, at least at the research station, they select southeast facing slopes. So again, analyzing the preliminary data, seems like the southeast facing slopes are the warmest ones at the research station. So somehow the snakes are able to tell that. They're very smart, so they know how to select these slopes. So we are acquiring more data on this subject. So to see what, if there are some patterns, right, if they exist, to identify them. There is a graduate student, Ocean Dacuna, and she is looking at a really, really interesting subject here. She's looking at stress on, oh no, I'm sorry. So this is Arturo Rocha. So he's gonna look at stress on rattlesnakes. So again, speaking of conservation, right? So everybody's concerned about global warming. So we already know that this region is gonna become drier, is gonna become warmer. So we're, since snakes are ectotherms, right? They're very depending on external temperature. So snakes are very good indicators, right, of how global warming is going to affect the Chihuahuan desert ecosystems. So Arturo Rocha is gonna identify the stress level of rattlesnakes, and he is going to see how these levels are going to be affected under different conditions. Another graduate student, Oceana Cuna, she's gonna look at another interesting subject. She's interested on a snake personality. Mm-hmm. She claims that individuals have different personalities, just like humans, right? Mm-hmm. She's going to assess that by measuring different variables, right? She claims that with snakes, some of them are bold, some of them are shy, and depending on their personality is going to influence their behavior, mm-hmm. and in the end is going to affect their survival, right? Mm-hmm. Another student, again, because we're playing with these devices, so he is going to, or actually he's already doing it. He has these body temperature data loggers of the snakes. These devices are becoming smaller, so they are just becoming perfect for using them with rattlesnakes, like in this case. So these allow us to obtain really important information that tell us about the life of these organisms, but also how we can come up with conservation plans or strategies, right, that help us to make sure that these organisms are going to be present. So going back to the new land that we acquire, right? This is a really cool place, just because now we have the river, we have a lot of riparian vegetation, and there is a lot of potential for projects that we could do in the future and know more about these important ecosystems. So something that I did lately, I started last October. So I placed these motion sensor cameras by the river, and it's amazing just to see the wildlife activity that takes place in these ecosystems. So just to give you an idea, right, of these mountain lions. So we already photo capture 3 individuals, but in general, we have recorded so far 13 species.
Mhm.
3 of them are new to our list, right, to the research station. But I think the information that we eventually we're going to produce from here will rank for, and it will show how important these ecosystems are, right? So we don't know, we don't need any artificial barriers here, right, affecting these ecosystems. And also, this will create a significant opportunity to interact with researchers in Mexico, and again increase the potential for environmental education here in the USA, but also in Mexico, and increase the protection of these habitats. Working with in general with rattlesnakes and working outdoors, it's a lot of work, and this require a lot of assistance, a lot of collaboration. I have to thank, like so many people funding sources, because it's nearly impossible to obtain this information with assistance from people with different backgrounds. And lastly, I'm just going to share with you this video. This is from an individual from the station. And just to show you how most individuals are very relaxed. Rattlesnakes in general, they're calm individuals. They usually, the aggressive behavior you observe is usually when they are disturbed by people. So these individuals are also very smart. Like this one is very curious. I arrived to the site, we saw each other, and he just wanted to see what I was doing there, like trying to find out an interpretation of my presence there. As you can tell, he's not rattling. He never rattled. He was just trying to find out what was going on.
That is awesome.
It is.
I know.
And with that, I'm gonna stop sharing.
It's funny because Maria and I went to hike at Waco Tanks, and we actually encountered a rattlesnake. But I think it was more the fact that it was trying to make its presence known, I guess, because we were like kind of like far a bit, and out of nowhere we could like hear it, and we're like, okay, we're leaving now. So yeah, it's quite interesting that you say that it is like more on the calmness part of it. It's just whenever they do feel like they need to make themselves known, or maybe you're disturbing their peace.
Yeah, my guess is that the snake saw you first.
Yes, we didn't see it.
Right. And I think, from my experience, I've seen that individuals react different. Like some of them will warn you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them will not do it at all. And then when Oceana Kuna, the one that is looking at personality, when I heard about that, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I can see that individuals are different in the way they react.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about the current research, because I was going to ask you two things. That was like, what have you seen, like the effect of climate change within the species? Like, have you seen a decline? Or it could happen like on the other way, that there's like an outbreak of the species. So that was one of my questions. I'm super happy that there's current research going on um, in in terms of the stress and also the personalities. Like since you interact so much with them, um, I mean, I was curious to see what their personality was because we have this sense like sharks, rattlesnakes are like dangerous to humans, but I don't feel that way. I feel it's more that we don't know about the species personality and we just like hear all this
Correct.
like miscommunication and misinformation about the species itself that it would be really awesome to learn more about how they are and their personality overall.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I mean, I think the main, well, one of the main problems, I guess, the lack of information.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I had the personal experience, like, so during most of my childhood, I mean, I was afraid of snakes, like
Uh-huh.
terrified by snakes.
I'm
And I
gonna
think it
send
comes
my
also
cousin
from,
with you.
I
He is
mean,
so
it comes from our
afraid.
culture,
Yes, I think that's
because I
mostly
mean,
it.
my parents, like nobody, I mean, my family, like nobody like snakes, right? But gradually, that perception is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And but I mean, like, yeah, definitely, we have a lot of work to do.
Have you seen a decline on the species on like the last years, like from like
Uh, that's a good question. The species that we have at the research station, they have a large distribution.
mm-hmm.
I'm talking like they are found all over the Southwest, all the way to central Mexico.
Mhm.
And there are not many studies. Actually, it's different. It's kind of challenging to quantify, like population sizes. So if we want to answer that question, I guess we need to start, like, okay,
Mhm.
how big was the population, let's say a few decades ago, and now what is the population size now, right? How it has changed. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of data.
No.
Maybe
So
that can be next.
yeah, I mean, actually, that's one of the goals, right? That we have, like, we need to get all that data because eventually, right, in the future, it's gonna be important, right?
Yeah.
That's how we can make comparisons. But another way in which snake populations are being affected, I remember this paper right now where they concluded that snake populations in Central America, in tropical environments, they are declining because their food is declining. In this case, amphibian populations are declining because another global problem, which is a fungal infection.
Mm-hmm.
But this fungus is being, their distribution is being influenced by climate change. So basically, we go back to the main problem, right? So here in the Southwest, we don't know, right? So these rattlesnakes are already adapted to extreme environment, right? It's a very dry, it's very hot environment. So as it's gonna get warmer, we don't know, maybe their activity periods are going to decrease, their reproduction frequency, or maybe their diet, right? The animals they consume, those populations will be affected. So
Mhm.
yes, we still need to find out what could happen. So what we can do is trying our best to protect the ecosystems now. So just to, I forgot to mention, right, that most of the land in Texas is a private land.
Mm-hmm.
So the research station is like probably like a special opportunity, special place where we can go there and obtain or try to acquire all this information and find out about these organisms and their ecosystems.
Yeah, I can say from the areas that we do studies in that we have noticed that we are running into less snakes than before, where we would go out, let's say 15 years ago, and we would run into a snake or two or three, you know, every day. And now I think this season, maybe we've seen one, maybe.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, but the area that we're at, there's a lot of grazing. There's, you know, it's not an open area for the public, but it's BLM leasing and stuff like that. So, you know, overgrazing, it's gonna decline like Vicente said, the food population. So, I mean, there's a lot of explanation, and climate change is affecting a lot of the grasslands. So that's also a decline in food for them. So there's a lot of research to be done.
Yeah, and especially this year has been very dry at the station too. So we got way less individuals compared to other years.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, all the models, you know, like they show that the area is going to get drier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Oh no.
the future.
What would be one piece of advice you would give to the community regarding snakes and like, people not wanting them, or fear, or if they come across a snake on their property, what would you recommend that they do?
I think something that, I mean, definitely is, you know, like environmental education. I think it's key, right? For changing our perception of snakes in general. And I think that's something, in my opinion, that has been good is social media. Because I can tell that the new generations, right, all the younger generations, I can see they see snakes different than my generation. And for example, like I'm a Facebook friend from all these snake groups, and I think they are doing a wonderful job. And you know, they share the snakes that they saw today, and they talk about these species and how they are important. And definitely the view that they have is different. And in that sense, I think social media has been good for snakes in general.
Yes, so I think we should use the power of communication and the tools we have right now to communicate, as you say, about these things. And well, I don't know what else. I don't know if anyone has any comments, but I do want to say thank you so much for the great information. It gives me hope to meet people like you that are doing this important work for our animals. I oftentimes say, like, animals don't have a voice of communicating with us directly, but if we spent a little bit of time understanding and really finding a way to communicate them, we could help them out. So right now our reality is that we're losing a lot of species all over the world, and it's terrifying, but it's also hopeful to know that there's people that are doing amazing things like you. So thank you so much for working so hard, for sharing it with us, and we hope that we can also communicate all of this with more people. So thank you, and we honor your work and your time here.
Yes,
it was a pleasure for me to share this information.
And we want to have you back.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Once you gather the rest of the data, we want you here.
Season 2.
I'll be happy to do it. And but I just want to mention that like you mentioned, right, that we're helping this species, but if we realize actually we're helping us,
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
Yeah. Both
yeah.
of
There's,
but go ahead.
no, yeah, you guys are doing important work, and it's good to know that you know, we have a group at UTEP that's undertaking, and it's local, and we have that knowledge base, local knowledge base here. So it's good to know that people can go to UTEP, look to UTEP, and see
Right.
what all of the good work that you guys are doing. You know, you don't have to go somewhere far to find good research, good science. So
Thank you.
So much.
It was a pleasure to share this information. And Claudia, thank you for inviting me.
well, thank you for joining us.
And if you have any
Yes.
more information,
Nice meeting you.
send it to Claudia and we want to read it. We want to
Yeah.
stay.
Anything you want to share, we can post it on our stuff too.
Mhm.
Yes,
I will.
please. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much,
Nice meeting you.
Vicente. Very nice to meet
Great to meet
you.
you. Likewise.
And we'll see you back once you have more information.
I'll be happy to do it.
Good.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
You
Bye.
too. Good night.